the council tax bills of this country, which on average will top £2,000 for millions of households next year, with payments set to rise on average by 4.3%. Now, this has all happened in a kind of stealthy way because not everybody is aware of it, not everybody notices it, but it's a big amount of money for an awful lot of people in an awful lot of households. Let's talk now to Darwin Friend, policy analyst at the Taxpayers Alliance. Darwin, a very good morning to you. Welcome.
Good morning, Mike. Thanks for having me on.
Not at all. This has sort of happened over the years in a way which is quite insidious to me, because you kind of don't notice council tax going up. But for that statistic to have average council tax bills topping £2,000, that's an extraordinary amount of money, isn't it?
As always, Mike, you're right. Taxpayers simply cannot afford tax hikes of this size at this time, given the pressures that the COVID pandemic has had on household budgets. I think councils actually need to focus on getting their own house in order first. I mean, research we've done at the Taxpayers Alliance has shown that councils have spent £6.8 million on flights in recent years, and over £6.5 million on award ceremonies. So before asking residents to dig further into their own pockets, I think they need to be cutting their wasteful spending first.
Well, exactly. And these, of course, are organisations that are always complaining that they've had their central funding cut, that they haven't got any spare money. They have to shut the local library because they can't afford to run it. But there's no shortage of money going into their pension funds, and there's no shortage of six-figure salaries going on either, is there?
No, well, as you probably know, we have an annual release of the Town Hall Rich List, and last year it showed 2,667 local authorities employees earn over £100,000. And the report by SIPFA mentions the North East and South West as having an average council tax over £2,000, where in fact both of those areas, the North East had 115 employees earning over 100,000, and the South West had over 220. So there's clearly plenty of money for them to give out to their employees.
Well, exactly. And the services haven't exactly been improving over the years, have they?
No, absolutely not. And I think a lot of taxpayers, a lot of your listeners are going to be really wondering what their value for money is by these tax rises. I mean, you only have to look at potholes, for example. They're never-ending complaints about them. And given the fact that local authorities only actually raise 20% of the funds that they spend, the rest of it is from the central government. So clearly they don't mind using national taxes in order to pay for local spending.
And quite frankly, during these pandemic lockdowns, an awful lot of work that the council would normally be giving out to people, such as things like fixing roads or even kind of, trimming hedgerows, or in parts of the country where they need to do that kind of thing. I mean, none of that's been going on, has it?
No, absolutely not. Like I say, the COVID pandemic should have actually made, in a sense, the pressures on some budgets for councils easier. But as the Office for Budget Responsibility has shown, these tax rises from next month are going to raise £1.8 billion extra for councils. And by 2025, it's £7.5 billion that adds up to. Now, I just don't think that's sustainable for taxpayers who are not seeing pay rises themselves in order to fund these tax hikes.
Well, that's right. And an awful lot of people still think that the way that they rate properties is very old-fashioned, because they're still using, are they not? I think I'm right in saying, a sort of a tariff from the 90s, aren't they?
Yeah, so the last time they actually did a valuation was in 1991. And so actually two properties that may have been built at exactly the same time in exactly the same place, but may have completely different rates now because their valuation was it from 1991. And so one thing that they desperately need to do is actually update that, in my opinion, and so then people are actually getting a fair evaluation of what their house is actually worth.
Yes, and I know that people really didn't like the poll tax, but I always thought that actually charging households, depending on how many people lived in that house, was actually a far fairer way of doing it, rather than, say, charging somebody who might not be on anything other than a fixed income, who happened to live in a big house because it's always been their house, but there was only one of them, having to pay loads.
Yeah, I mean, economically speaking, it is just a more more fair way of taxing people, because obviously everyone's facing the same rate. But I think the thing that we really need to be asking, given the fact that we have got the current system that we've got, is how councils are spending that money. And like I say, they're clearly not spending it just on services for taxpayers, which is what it should be there for. They're spending it on award ceremonies for themselves, which, given the fact the tax burden is currently at a 70-year high, that I don't think taxpayers will appreciate that.
No, you're absolutely right. Darwin, it's great work. Thank you very much indeed. Darwin Friend, policy analyst at the Taxpayers Alliance there, explaining why so many people's council tax has now gone through the roof.